The clearing looked small from where we lay, but it felt enormous. It was the kind of place the war liked to choose for big things. Not dramatic, not majestic. Just a muddy patch of ground beside a slow, dirty river. A rough wooden dock. A lean-to roof of nailed scrapboards. A single lantern hanging from a beam, its light swaying gently with the night breeze. Beneath it, 3 crates. Same size, same shape, same faded markings, explosivos. 4 Viet Cong soldiers worked around them, moving with a quiet efficiency that made my stomach twist. They weren't rushing, they weren't nervous. They'd done this before. One checked the ropes on the small boat tied to the dock. Another pried open a crate and inspected something inside, metal glinting faintly in the lantern glow. They didn't know we were there, yet. My chest pressed into the damp earth as I lay flat, peering through a curtain of ferns. The smell of mud and stagnant water filled my nose. Mosquitoes whined near my ears. Every breath I took felt too loud. To my left, I could hear Cruz whispering something in Spanish under his breath. A prayer, a plea, maybe both. Danny lay beside him, eyes wide, throat working like he couldn't swallow. Ellis was to my right, fingers pressed into the dirt, knuckles white. His medic bag dug into his ribs. He hadn't complained once, but I knew what he was thinking. Every step closer to that clearing is more work for me. And in front, closest to the edge of the tree line, Harper and Price. Harper watched the scene through his binoculars, body still, breathing shallow. He looked like a man trying to do math with lives as variables. Price didn't need binoculars. He just stared, jaw clenched, eyes burning like he could set the crates off with anger alone. Harper lowered the lenses slowly. "That's them," he whispered. "Same kind of boat, same kind of crates." Price's voice was like gravel. Same kind of death. Harper thought for several seconds, long enough for my heart to start pounding harder. "We're not equipped for a full assault," Ellis murmured. "4 of them, 6 of us. If more are nearby, more are nearby," Cruz said softly. "They don't leave explosives like that alone." Danny whispered, "We should sabotage and leave. Tip the boat, cut the ropes, do something quiet." Price shook his head. "The crates stay intact. They'll just come back. Different boat, same result." Harper exhaled, the sound barely more than a sigh. "We have 3 objectives," he said quietly. 1, confirm the source. 2, stop this shipment. 3, stay alive long enough for any of that to matter. Danny's breathing quickened. "We're not going to make it, are we?" "Yes," Harper said firmly. "We are." He looked at Price. "Options?" Price didn't hesitate. "Take the 2 closest to the boat first," he whispered. "That cuts the launch. Then the crate checker. 4th man's the problem. He's watching the tree line." "He's watching the water," Ellis said. "Mostly." "Mostly isn't enough out here," Price muttered. Harper rubbed his thumb along the stock of his rifle, thinking, "We can't let them launch," he said. "If that boat leaves, we fail." "So we don't let it leave," Price replied. "Ever." The way he said ever made my skin prickle. Cruz whispered, "Harper, what if we just mark the location and call it in?" Harper shook his head. "Command already failed once. If this shipment hits another target while we sit on coordinates, we'll never forgive ourselves." He didn't say I'll never forgive myself, but we all heard it anyway. Ellis swallowed. "We go loud and this place lights up. There could be more beyond the clearing, in the underbrush, in the huts we can't see." Harper nodded. "So we go carefully." He drew a line in the dirt with his finger. "Price, you and I split to the left flank. Better angle on the dock. Thompson," he jerked his chin in my direction, "you take the right with Ellis. Cruz, Danny, you stay back. You don't fire unless you have to. You cover our exit." Danny's eyes widened. Cover your exit? That sounds like... It sounds like what it is, Harper said. We do what we can and we get out. No heroics. No staying to count bodies. Price's jaw flexed. If there are more, we'll hear them. Yeah, Ellis muttered, right after they shoot at us. Harper gave him the faintest of looks. Ellis. The medic sighed. Yeah, I know. Just needed to say it. Harper nodded. Then he did something he almost never did. He looked at each of us individually and placed a hand on the ground, palm down, fingers spread. Whatever happens down there, he whispered, remember this. We're not dying for command. We're not dying for a map. We're not dying for a report. His eyes locked on mine, then on Price's, then Cruz's, Ellis's, Danny's. We're doing this for the men who never got the chance to stop what we're about to stop. For Rivers, for the depot, for every convoy that never saw it coming. Cruz's voice trembled. And for ourselves. Harper nodded once. For ourselves. He lifted his hand. Let's move. The jungle floor felt like it shifted with every step. Harper and Price peeled off to the left, bodies low, moving like shadows. Ellis and I slipped to the right, staying behind a line of brush that ran along the edge of the clearing. Cruz and Danny stayed prone further back, barely visible through the ferns. My heart pounded so hard I thought the men in the clearing might hear it. The VC soldiers continued their work, unaware they were being watched. One of them laughed at something the other said. The sound, a low murmur over the river. Another lit a cigarette, the ember glowing briefly as he inhaled. So ordinary, so casual, like they weren't loading death. Ellis whispered, I've patched up men who never saw the blast that hit them. You always wonder, looking at the shrapnel, where it started. Tonight, I whispered back, we found one answer. He nodded. We crept closer. 10 yards, 8, 6. I could see details now. Sweat on their brows, dirt on their cuffs, the worn straps of their rifles. The crates were partially open, filled with tightly bound cylinders and coiled wire. Ellis breathed, that's enough explosive to tear a convoy in half. On the other side of the clearing, I caught a glimpse of Harper's silhouette through the leaves. Price was just behind him, motionless. Harper raised 3 fingers in the air. I swallowed hard and steadied my rifle. His hand flattened. I aimed at the man by the boat. Harper's fist closed, and all at once, the clearing erupted. Harper fired first, a short, controlled burst. The man by the boat dropped before he could turn. Price's shot followed a fraction of a second later, taking the second by the dock in the throat. Ellis and I fired almost simultaneously. My target stumbled backward, chest bursting red. Ellis's man spun, reached for his rifle, and then crumpled to the ground. 4 shots, 4 bodies. For a second, the world stopped. No movement, no sound, just the river. Then a shout, not from the clearing, from beyond it. Incoming! Ellis hissed. Figures burst from the brush behind the shack. 2, 3, 4. More. VC soldiers, weapons already in hand, reacting faster than we wanted to believe they could. It was never just 4, Price growled. Harper shouted, cover, take cover. Bullets tore through the foliage where we'd been seconds before. I dropped behind a rotted tree stump, bark exploding above my head. Ellis dove next to me, cursing under his breath. To our left, I heard Price's M16 barking in short, brutal bursts. Harper shouted something I couldn't make out over the gunfire. Cruz yelled, Danny, down! And a trio of shots whistled overhead. The air turned into a swarm of angry hornets, bullets snapping, leaves shredding, branches cracking. I pressed my cheek into the mud and fired blindly toward the muzzle flashes, feeling the recoil slam into my shoulder. Someone shouted and fell. Someone else yelled a command. Left flank, go left! Cut them off from the river! The VC weren't panicking, they were maneuvering. Cruz's voice rose in the chaos. "Thompson, on your right!" I turned just in time to see a dark shape rush toward the edge of the clearing, trying to push the boat away from the dock with one foot while firing wildly with his rifle. I didn't think. I just squeezed the trigger. He dropped, leg folding under him, falling halfway into the water. The boat drifted back, untethered. Ellis tapped my arm hard. "We can't stay here. They'll flank us." "Harper," I shouted, "we're pinned." "Hold!" Harper yelled back. "We keep them off the crates!" I risked a glance over the stump. Two VCs sprinted toward the dock, trying to grab the crates, maybe to haul them back to cover. Price stepped out from his position, exposed for half a second, and cut both of them down. At least two more opened fire on him from the brush. He jerked sideways and dropped behind a rock, grunting. "Price!" Cruz shouted. "I'm fine," Price roared back. "Keep firing!" Cruz and Danny were further back, lying prone, Danny's shots sporadic and panicked. Cruz's were slower but more accurate, each one timed between bursts like he was threading needles through chaos. A bullet hit the tree above us, showering Ellis and me with bark. "I am not dying in the mud today," Ellis muttered, reloading. "Today?" I managed to say. "You planning a different day?" "Maybe Tuesday," he said. "Feels right." The banter didn't cut the fear, but it kept us from drowning in it. Suddenly, the entire clearing flashed white. For a split second, everything froze. The air, the noise, even my heart. Then the sound hit. Not a blast, a whoomp, like the air itself had been punched. One of the crates had been hit. Not enough to detonate fully, just enough to spit fire and smoke. Sparks flew in a blistering arc, landing dangerously close to the other crates. "No!" Harper shouted. He dashed from cover, sprinting toward the dock. "Harper!" I yelled, throat tearing. He didn't stop. He slid beside the damaged crate, grabbed a smoldering cloth, and hurled it into the river. Flames sputtered and hissed in the water. Smoke billowed around him. Bullets whipped past his head. Price fired over his shoulder, laying down a desperate curtain of suppressing fire. "Move, Harper!" Ellis shouted. Harper turned, grabbed the edge of the still-closed crate, and shoved it hard, sliding it away from the burning debris. A bullet clipped the corner of the wood, sending a splintered shard into his shoulder. He grunted, staggered, but didn't fall. Then Cruz screamed, "Right side! They're flanking!" I twisted toward the sound. 3 VC were moving along the tree line, trying to angle behind Harper and Price. Their rifles flashed with muzzle fire, cutting through branches, driving us deeper into the dirt. If they got around us, if they pinned us between the river and the trees, we were done. I heard my pulse louder than the gunshots. We were at the point in every story where the narrator can't promise he makes it out. I pressed my cheek into the mud, tasted dirt and copper, and realized whatever happened next, this was the moment we couldn't walk back from. The 3 shapes coming around the right flank moved like they'd done this before. They didn't rush. They didn't shout. They advanced low and fast, rifles already up, cutting across the tree line to get behind Harper and Price at the dock. If they made it around that curve of brush, we'd be trapped between the river and their gunfire. Cruz saw it first. "Right side!" he screamed. "They're coming around!" Instinct took over. I swung my rifle toward the tree line and fired 3 quick bursts. The muzzle flash lit up the ferns in front of me, turning leaves into sharp silhouettes. One of the VCs stumbled and fell hard. The other 2 dropped to their knees, answering with a vicious volley. Bullets tore through the brush in a vicious hiss. Twigs snapped. Dirt kicked into my face. Ellis cursed beside me as something punched into the log inches from his head. "Down!" he shouted. We dropped flat. To my left, I heard Danny's voice, high and tight. I can't see. Where are they?" Cruz's answer came like a command and a prayer combined. Just watch my barrel. Anywhere I shoot, you shoot." He fired slow and deliberate. Danny fired frantic and louder. From the dock, Harper yelled over the chaos, "Keep them off the crates!" Another barrage of gunfire answered him, splintering the dock beams, chewing into the support posts. The lantern above them swung crazily, throwing wild shadows over the scene. Price's voice cut through the noise, low and furious. "They're trying to pin us! Left side! Left!" More figures emerged through the brush near the back of the clearing. Another squad. Maybe 3, maybe 4. It was hard to tell through the gun smoke and darkness. We weren't facing just 4 men anymore. We were facing a small unit. Ellis leaned hard into my shoulder. "If they circle the riverbank, we're done." I gritted my teeth. "Then we don't let them circle." Another burst came from the right. One bullet sliced through my sleeve with a hot sting, grazing the skin underneath. I flinched, more from shock than pain. Ellis saw the red bloom. "You hit?" he snapped. "Grazed," I said. "I'm fine." He nodded once. "Then keep shooting." From somewhere beyond the clearing, we heard a sharp whistle, a signal. That chilled me more than the bullets. They weren't panicking. They were coordinating. Price's voice cut through again, raw. "Harper, we need to fall back." Harper, half covered behind the crate he'd shoved earlier, turned just enough to shout back. "We fall back. They take the boat. We fail." He ducked as rounds chewed chips out of the dock beam above his head. Price leaned around his cover and snapped off 3 controlled bursts. One VC went down, another staggered behind a tree trunk. The third kept firing, muzzle flashing bright in the dark. Cruz yelled, "I'm out! I'm out!" as his rifle clicked on a dry chamber. Danny fumbled with his magazine, panic turning his fingers clumsy. Wait, I'm trying. Breathe!" Cruz barked. "In! Out! Like I showed you!" Danny sucked in air, tried again, and finally slammed the magazine home. His hand still shook, but he got the bolt forward. I risked another look. 2 VC were nearly at the curve of brush that would give them a clear shot down our line. Too close, too fast. "Ellis, smoke!" I shouted. He didn't hesitate. His hand dove into his bag, came up with a small canister. He yanked the pin and hurled it toward the tree line. For a moment, nothing. Then, a billowing cloud of thick white smoke exploded outward, swallowing the flankers. They fired blindly, rounds going wild. Cruz laughed once, breathless. "Good, Doc, good." Harper saw the smoke and seized the moment. "Price, left, with me." They moved as one, sprinting across the edge of the clearing, using the smoke as partial cover. Bullets followed them, chewing into the ground at their heels. Price didn't duck. He didn't slow. He fired on the move, each shot controlled, forcing the enemies behind the smoke to stay low. Harper slid behind a small overturned boat carcass near the water and shouted back at us, "We have to blow it!" At first I thought he meant the crates. Then I realized he meant everything. Ellis swore under his breath. "He's serious." "Of course he is," I muttered. "He's Harper." Cruz shouted across the clearing, "You blow those crates and we're all dead." "Not if we do it right," Harper yelled back. "We push them in first." Price turned, eyes blazing. "I'll do it." For the first time all night, Harper hesitated. "Price, I'll do it," Price repeated. "You cover." The gunfire intensified, VC rounds hitting closer, angrier. The smoke started to thin. We were losing the cover Ellis had bought us. If they pushed fully around the flank, we'd be encircled. Harper glanced at the crates, at the dwindling smoke, at us. Then he nodded. "Do it." Price moved. He sprinted from cover and reached the nearest crate in 3 strides. With a guttural shout, he shoved his shoulder against it. The crate scraped along the dock, heavy and reluctant, but it moved. 1 foot, 2. Shots exploded around him, snapping at his boots, chipping wood at his heels. I fired at the flashes in the brush, trying to buy him seconds. Ellis did the same, teeth bared, face twisted with something like rage. Cruz called out ranges between bursts. Danny fired where Cruz pointed, each trigger pull a small act of defiance against his own fear. The crate reached the edge. With one last shove, Price sent it tilting over. It toppled into the river with a tremendous splash, sending brown water up in an arc. One down. He spun to reach for the second. A shot cracked. He jerked backward. Time slowed. His body twisted as the bullet punched into his side. His rifle flew from his hands. He hit the dock hard, skidding on the wet wood. "Price!" Harper roared. My own shout got stuck somewhere between my chest and my throat. Cruz screamed something in Spanish I didn't understand. Danny went completely still. For a half second, Price didn't move, didn't breathe. Then his hand clawed into the wood. He rolled onto his back, teeth gritted, blood already spreading across his fatigues. "I'm not," he gasped, "not done." Ellis nearly launched himself from cover. I grabbed his sleeve. "You can't reach him," I shouted. "He'll bleed out," Ellis yelled back. Harper made the decision for all of us. "Thompson, Ellis, suppress, Cruz, Danny, right flank, move!" He broke from cover, racing toward Price in a crouched sprint that looked impossible under this much gunfire. It wasn't bravery, it was refusal. Refusal to leave a man on the ground. I laid into my trigger, firing in short, harsh bursts at anything that looked like movement. Ellis reloaded so fast his hands blurred, his shots firing almost in rhythm with mine. Cruz and Danny scrambled to the right flank, trying to keep the enemy from wrapping fully around us. Cruz fired methodically. Danny's bursts were messier, but they were there. Harper slid beside Price, grabbed him under the arm. "On your feet!" he snarled. "I can't," Price hissed, face twisted in pain. "Yes, you can," Harper snapped. "Up!" He dragged. Price pushed, and between the two of them, they got him upright for a second. Long enough for Harper to half carry, half shove him back toward cover. Another bullet cracked past them, then another. One clipped Harper's sleeve, tearing fabric but missing flesh. They dove behind the overturned boat carcass just as a burst chewed into the dock where Price's head had been. "Ellis!" Harper shouted. "Get over here!" Ellis didn't wait for permission. He bolted. I covered him as best I could, heart smashing against my ribs. Something burned across my shoulder. Another graze, maybe, but I didn't have time to check. Ellis slid into place beside Price, ripping open his kit before he even stopped moving. "Where?" he demanded. Price gritted his teeth and moved his hand. "Side, left, lower." Ellis slapped his hand away, tearing open the shirt, fingers pressing along the wound. "Through and through," he muttered. "You lucky bastard! Hold still." Price laughed once, a short, pained sound. "Define lucky." Cruz's voice rose over the gunfire. "They're pulling back. No, wait." He was wrong. They weren't pulling back. They were repositioning. The gunfire shifted, consolidating around the far left side of the clearing. They were abandoning the boat, doubling down on killing us here. Because now they knew what we were after. We weren't just Americans patrolling. We were Americans who had found their fuse line, and they couldn't let that stand. Harper shouted over the roar. "We have to finish it. One." "Crate left!" Ellis snapped. "Price is bleeding out," Price hissed between his teeth. "I am not bleeding out just yet." Harper's eyes moved fast between the last crate, the enemy muzzle flashes, and the river. Then his gaze landed on me. "Thompson." It wasn't a question. My stomach dropped. "Yeah?" I croaked. "You see that last crate?" he shouted. I risked a glance. The final wooden box sat half-shadowed, half-lit by the swinging lantern, still on the dock, still intact. "Yeah," I yelled back. "Can you hit it?" he demanded. Ellis swore. "You're insane." Harper ignored him. "If we ignite it on the dock, we're dead," I shouted. "Not if you angle it," Harper yelled. "Hit the underside, punch it into the river." It was a bad idea. It was a desperate idea. But it was the only idea we had left. Cruz yelled, "I can't hold the right much longer." Danny's voice shook. "They're still coming." Price grabbed my sleeve with his good hand and hauled me closer. "If you miss," he panted, "we all die." "Not helping," Ellis muttered, packing gauze into the wound. Price stared straight into my eyes. "Don't miss," he said. The world shrank around me. The gunfire, the shouting, the river, the crates, the smoke, all of it blurred into background noise. It was just me, my rifle, and that final box. I took a breath. In, out, in again. I rose from cover just enough to see over the route, wiped the mud from my sights with a shaking thumb, and steadied the barrel. The crate sat at an angle, one corner slightly closer to the river. The underside looked slick with moisture. If I hit it just right, if the impact and splintering force were strong enough, if the wood gave before the contents did. "Come on," I whispered. "Come on." I exhaled and squeezed. The shot cracked through the clearing like a whip. The bullet struck the corner of the crate. It splintered violently, wood exploding outward in a shower of shards. The entire box lurched, rocked, and tipped. For one suspended heartbeat, it hung on the edge. Then it rolled. The crate tumbled off the dock and crashed into the river with a heavy splash, bobbing up, half submerged. Ellis screamed, "Again! Hit it again!" I fired twice more, rounds punching into the waterlogged wood. One round sparked, the other thunked. For a terrifying second, nothing happened. Then a single, blinding flash. Under the surface, the river erupted. The explosion didn't roar upward like the depot blast. It boomed outward beneath the waterline, sending a massive wave surging in all directions. The dock shattered. The half-loaded boat broke apart like it was made of paper. Shards of wood and metal flew, but the water ate most of the force. A wall of muddy river sprayed across the clearing, drenching all of us. Enemy gunfire cut off mid-burst as the shockwave slammed into the riverbank. One of the flanking VC screamed as he was thrown backward into a tree. For a moment, there was no sound, no gunfire, no shouting, just the fading echo of that underwater blast and the slosh of returning water. We lay there, soaked, stunned, ears ringing. Harper was the first to move. He dragged himself up onto one knee, blinking through the spray. "The crates," he rasped. "They're gone." What was left of them drifted downstream in small, harmless pieces. No more shipment, no more boat, no more line. Cruz let out a weak, disbelieving laugh. "Madre de Dios, you did it!" Danny started crying. Not from sadness this time, from pure adrenaline and relief crashing into each other. Ellis checked Price again, hands moving quickly, efficiently. "Wound still clean," he said. "We need to move, but he's not dying on me today." Price grunted. "I told you." Harper scanned the tree line. No movement. The VC were gone. They'd either retreated or were regrouping. "We're not staying to find out which," Harper said. "We're done here. Mission's over." He looked directly at me. "You bought us that," he said. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a man whose hands wouldn't stop shaking. We pulled back from the clearing slowly, staying low, staying ready. Cruz supported Danny, who suddenly felt hollowed out. Ellis and Harper helped Price stand, one under each good arm. The river whispered behind us, "Different now." We limped into the jungle, leaving the shattered dock and broken staging ground in the dark. I wrote later, when my hands finally stopped trembling, "Tonight we stopped the river, but we paid for it in blood, terror, and pieces of ourselves. The crates are gone. The boat is gone. But so is the version of us that walked into that clearing. The jungle swallowed us again. Not gently. It closed behind us like a mouth, branches tangling overhead, ferns tugging at our legs, shadows flickering where no light should have reached. The river explosion still echoed in my bones. My lungs felt tight. My heart beat sharp, my hands trembling no matter how hard I tried to steady them. We were alive. But alive felt different now, like a borrowed state. Price leaned heavily on Harper and Ellis. Each step a shudder of pain, each breath a clenched teeth hiss. Blood stained his fatigues, dark patches spreading slowly. "You still with us?" Harper whispered. Price smirked through the pain. "I'll bury you all before I go." Ellis rolled his eyes. "That's comforting." Behind me, Danny stumbled along, still crying silently, breath hiccuping every few steps. Cruz guided him, one hand on his shoulder, murmuring in Spanish, quiet as the wind. The jungle noises grew louder, insects, frogs, distant branches cracking, but underneath all that, something else lurked. Stillness, the dangerous kind. "We need to move faster," Harper murmured. "I agree," Ellis said, glancing over his shoulder. "They'll regroup." "They'll chase us," Cruz added. "They should," Price growled. "I blew up their damn river." "We blew up their river," Harper corrected. Price snorted. "Fine, but I did the hard part." Harper didn't argue. He just kept moving. We stayed low, weaving through the roots and vines, following the faint trail we'd carved earlier. But everything looked different in the dark. The angle of a branch that felt familiar now looked like a spear aimed at my head. The silhouette of a tree stump looked like a crouched figure ready to strike. Ellis whispered, "Harper, is this the right way?" "Yes," Harper answered. "Stay on my 6." The sounds behind us grew faint, too faint. Danny tugged Cruz's sleeve. "Do you think they're coming?" Cruz didn't answer right away. His hand tightened around his rosary. "I think we go faster," he said. We did. 15 minutes later, the jungle thinned slightly, just enough for moonlight to break through the canopy. The air cooled by a few degrees, and for a brief moment, I allowed myself to believe we might actually make it back to the wire without losing anyone. Then Price staggered. Harper caught him hard. "Easy, easy. Stay with me." Price winced, clutching his side. "Just dizzy." Ellis crouched beside him, pulling out a flashlight with its lens taped to reduce glare. He peeled back the soaked bandage. "Damn it," he muttered. "Through and through or not, you're bleeding more than I like." Price panted. "Just keep moving." Ellis shook his head. "Not until I wrap you again." "We don't have," Price hissed as Ellis pressed pressure to the wound. "Time." "We make time," Ellis said sharply, "unless you want to die 30 yards from victory like an idiot." Price clenched his teeth. "Do it fast." Ellis did. As Ellis rewrapped, Cruz stepped behind us, scanning the jungle. "Harper," he whispered. Harper stiffened. "What?" Cruz pointed with 2 fingers, barely moving. "Listen." We listened. Nothing. No insects, no birds, no frogs, nothing. The same silence we heard the night before the depot exploded, a silence that meant something had entered the jungle and scared everything else away. Price's breathing grew harsher. "They're coming," Harper motioned. "Move, now!" Ellis slung Price's arm back around his shoulder. Harper grabbed Price's other side. We pushed forward again, faster now, no longer caring about noise. Branches whipped our faces, mud sucked at our boots. Every few seconds, someone stumbled. We didn't stop. Couldn't. The silence grew heavier behind us, like footsteps we couldn't hear. Danny whispered, "Please, please don't let me die tonight." Cruz tightened his grip on Danny's shoulder. "No one dies tonight." But Danny wasn't the only one thinking it. Even Harper's breathing grew strained. After another 10 minutes, the terrain dipped sharply. The ground sloped into a shallow ravine, familiar enough that my heart jumped. "I know this place," I whispered. "We're close." Harper nodded. "The wire is just beyond this ridge. Keep moving." We descended the ravine carefully, using roots for leverage. Ellis slipped once, nearly pulling Price down with him. Danny almost lost his footing, but Cruz grabbed him by the collar and hauled him upright. We climbed the opposite side, pulling ourselves up on vines that felt ready to snap. Halfway up, the silence behind us broke. A whistle, sharp, high, close. Harper whipped around. "Go!" We scrambled up the ridge, every muscle screaming. I heard branches breaking, fast, voices, soft commands, the thud of boots. They were close, too close. Cruz pushed Danny upward. "Climb! Climb!" Danny clawed his way up the slope, dirt pouring down around him. Ellis and Harper practically dragged Price up the last few feet. At the top, the jungle opened slightly, and through the trees, maybe 50 yards away, the wire, the perimeter lights, faint shapes of guard towers. Home. "We're here," Harper gasped. A rifle cracked behind us. Danny screamed and dropped to the ground. "Danny!" Cruz shouted, throwing himself beside him. Danny clutched his ankle, blood leaking between his fingers. I'm hit! I'm hit!" Another bullet snapped past my head and buried itself in the tree trunk behind me. "Down!" Harper barked. "Get down!" We fell into whatever cover we could. "They're right behind us," Ellis cried. Price snarled, trying to stand. "Give me a gun." Harper forced him back down. "You're not moving! Thompson, Cruz, lay down cover!" We opened fire into the brush, not at shapes, but at muzzle flashes. I squeezed the trigger until my rifle clicked, then slapped in another magazine with shaking hands. Cruz fired slow, controlled, eyes burning behind the sights. Danny lay beside him, gripping his leg and screaming into the dirt. Ellis tore open Danny's pants leg and slapped a field dressing against the wound. "Through the muscle," he muttered. "He'll live. Not now. Move!" Harper yelled toward the wire, voice cracking raw. "Contact! Contact! Friendlies in the open!" For a sick second, there was no answer. Then, a spotlight cut through the trees, then another, then the clatter of boots behind the wire. Harper bellowed, "Move! Merge at the wire!" We ran. I grabbed Danny under one arm. Cruz grabbed the other. Ellis and Harper pulled Price. Every step felt like dragging through cement. Bullets chased us, splintering bark, throwing dirt into our faces. Someone at the wire shouted, "Friendly! Friendly! Hold fire!" Then the perimeter erupted, not at us but past us. M60s thundered, rifles cracked in synchronized bursts. Tracer rounds cut red arcs through the trees. The jungle behind us exploded with sound. Men screamed, leaves shredded. Guns answered guns. Cruz screamed, "Go! Go!" The last few yards felt eternal. Every step was a prayer, every breath a miracle. Harper shoved Price through the gap in the wire. Ellis dove in behind him. Cruz and I dragged Danny the final feet. Hands grabbed us. MPs, guards, medics. They pulled Danny first, then Cruz, then me. Harper stumbled through last, collapsing to his knees. Behind us, the firefight raged, a brutal, punishing wall of sound, but it was behind us. We were inside the wire. We were home. Medics swarmed Danny and Price immediately. Ellis barked instructions, taking over where they hesitated. Cruz collapsed beside him. Rosary clenched so tight, his knuckles turned bone white. Harper stood unsteadily, breathing hard, eyes still fixed on the jungle like he expected the enemy to leap over the wire at any second. An officer ran toward us. "What the hell happened out there?" he demanded. Harper didn't look away from the tree line. "We finished the mission," he said softly. "All of it." I sat in the dirt, legs trembling uncontrollably, my rifle still in my hands. My vision blurred, and it took me a moment to realize I was crying. Not loud, not sobbing, just tears that my body couldn't hold back anymore. Danny screamed as medic set his ankle. Cruz wiped his forehead with shaking fingers. Price slipped in and out of consciousness. Ellis paced, Flipping between doctor and broken man, Harper finally turned toward me. His face softened. "You did good," he said. I swallowed hard. "Did we finish it?" Harper nodded. "All of it." A long silence settled. "Harper?" I whispered. "Yeah?" "What happens now?" He looked toward the burning jungle, toward the fading gunfire, toward the last night of the war for us. "Now," he said, "we survive." The morning. That night, after medics bandaged my grazes and I finally found my cot, I opened Mary's journal with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. I wrote, "Tonight, we didn't win. We didn't lose. We escaped. And sometimes escape is all a man can ask for in war." Then, after a long breath, "If tomorrow brings the end, then let this page be proof. We were brave. We were terrified. We were broken. But we were not alone." And then I closed the journal and whispered into the darkness, "We're coming home soon, one way or another."